Hello students and welcome to the lecture. So students, as you can see here, that basically in this lecture what we are going to discuss is negotiable instrument and the concept of transactions. Okay, like many times if you are the student of economics and if you are ever going through this, then you must have heard this name, negotiable instruments. Okay, the negotiable instruments are generally stands out for the payment methods that we have. Okay, and this is always known as the creditable payment, which means that this is not an on the spot payment. It is some delay payment or deferred payment, the payment which is to be made in the future for the thing that is being purchased in present time. Okay, so that's how the negotiable instruments are. But what we really need to understand is the negotiable instrument concept of transactions. Like how does these negotiable instruments use for making the transactions? And that is going to be our part 1 for the discussion. In this, we will start with some basic introduction to the negotiable instruments, and we will see some facts and figures of the concept of transactions. How does this negotiable instrument works? Like you can see the index. In this, we will talk about the negotiable instrument for the first, then promissory note second, then bills of exchange, then demand drafts, then endorsement of negotiable instrument, then endorsement in bank, then endorsement in full sense, the shares and debentures we will discuss, the difference between the shares and debentures that we will discuss, equity share and preference share, what are these? We will discuss the difference between these. We will discuss deferred shares and bonus shares, that we will discuss. Then what is a share capital? We will talk about it. And at last, we will have the summary of all the things that we will cover in this lecture. So by seeing the content, you could conclude by yourself that it is going to be a very interesting and very useful discussion. But before starting, then there is a small disclaimer that we hear also. And we require to understand this disclaimer first before we proceed further. So the disclaimer is like this. The images used in a slide deck are for educational purposes only. We respect the intellectual property rights of the original creators and owners of these images. If you are the owner of any of the images used in this deck and have any concerns or issues, then please contact us at sathee@iitk.ac.in and we shall remove the images. Now, after understanding this disclaimer, let's begin with the topic. So first, we are going to talk about the negotiable instrument. What are these? First, we have to take their introduction. After understanding them, we will be able to proceed further. So, in simple terms, the negotiable means anything that is easily transferable from one person to another in return for consideration. Okay, like you can say, negotiable is like something that could be changed. It is not absolute. Okay, and when we talk about it in the form of the transactions by using the instruments, basically we are saying that this negotiable instrument is actually easily transferable. It might be drawn some another person, but it could be transferred easily from that person to another person, which means it gives you a convenience to transfer it from one to another. An instrument means written document by virtue of which a right is created in favor of some person. Like suppose, if there are three persons, X, Y, Z, the X drawn a negotiable instrument on Mr. Y, then Mr. Y is able to transfer it to Mr. Z. Okay, but this transfer could only be possible when Mr. Y having a right on the instrument that has been drafted by Mr. X. And how does this right could be conferred? This right could be confirmed only when this is in the written form. If it is not in the written form, that could not be transferred. And that's what I mean. The negotiable instrument is actually a document which is consisting of some contract guaranteeing the payment of a specific amount of money, either on demand or at a set time, with a payer named on the document. Like suppose Mr. X is the one who is making this instrument. It means Mr. X is guaranteeing some payment of some specific amount. Like suppose the specific amount is rupees 1 lakh. So when Mr. X is drawing this instrument, he is promising that he will pay 1 lakh rupees, which is a specific amount. It could not be higher to this. It could not be lower to this. It is specific. Okay. And to whom he will draft this document, that person is liable to receive it whether on demand or on a set time. Demand means Mr. X is saying whenever you want me to pay this 1 lakh rupees, I will pay. That is on demand. Okay. Set time means suppose if today is 1st January, Mr. X said after 30 days, which means on 31st January, he is liable to pay this amount. So now the amount could not be asked in between. Okay. It could only be asked on or after 31st January because it is having some set time. And of course, the payer name would be on document. It means the person who is liable to pay it, that will be written on the document to set the person's liability. All right. And how does this negotiable instruments works? Like if we say that these are the instruments and these are used for the transactions and the payment or specific amount and all, must be they regulating by something? And if so, then what is the you can say source that is regulating them? That is to be understand, right? So if we go after the source through which these things are being regulated, then these are being regulated through the Negotiable Instrument Act of 1881. Now you can see the year. What do you think? This year is the year when the Britishers had their control in our country, which means the Negotiable Instrument Act 1881 was actually introduced by the British time. Okay. And that's defined the negotiable instrument to as a promissory note, bill of exchange, or a check which is payable either to the order or the bearer. So these three things like the promissory note, bill of exchange, or checks, these are the part of negotiable instrument, and we can say these are the things that could be used as the negotiable instrument. Now, I hope some basic things have been cleared in your mind regarding the negotiable instrument. How does it work? What is the significance of this and other things? Okay. When we move further, we got the first thing, that is the promissory note. Here you can see the picture of this as well. Now, what is the promissory note? Promissory note. Here you are getting the word promise being used here. So what is the promise? Promise is like you can say you are promising something to someone. Like, okay, I will do this. Right? So basically it is an instrument in writing containing an unconditional undertaking signed by the maker to pay a certain sum of money only to or to the order of a certain person or to the bearer of the instrument. Now here you have seen several things, and these things are required to be understood. First is unconditional undertaking, which means that once the person made a promise on the promissory note, then he is become liable unconditionally to fulfill that promise. He could not proceed with the conditions after that. He is to accept them. All right. To pay a certain sum of money. Like suppose if the person promised rupees 1 lakh in the promissory note, the person is now liable to pay rupees 1 lakh. Okay. It is a certain and specific sum of money. But now the question is, to whom that money is to be paid? Who will receive that money and who is entitled to get this? So this is actually could be understood by these words, only to or to the order of a certain person or to the bearer of instrument. So here we could assume the two people, Mr. X and Mr. Y. Mr. X is the person who is making the promissory note, which means that he is the one who is making the promise that after a specific period of time, he will be liable to pay rupees 1 lakh to Mr. Y. Okay. So Mr. Y is the person to whom the promissory note have been drafted. Okay. And on the order of Mr. Y, the payment is liable to be paid if it is on demand. And if it is set by date, then on that date, Mr. X becomes liable to pay rupees 1 lakh to Mr. Y. The another thing that you can see is the bearer of the instrument. In the first slide, we have got to know that basically the promissory note are the part of negotiable instruments, and negotiable instruments could be easily transferred from one to another. So Mr. Y may transfer promissory note to Mr. Z. Mr. X is liable to pay 1 lakh rupees. Okay. And if the promissory note being transferred to Mr. Z, then he will pay this amount to Mr. Z, not Mr. Y. It's totally depend upon Mr. Y whether he received this money or whether he transferred the bill to someone other. Transferred the note to someone other. Okay. So I hope now the promissory note is cleared in front of you. It is kind of a promise, okay, of paying some lump sum amount in the demand on some specific date to the person to whom the promise has been made, and the person having the right to whom the promise has been made to transfer it to some another person. That could not be governed, that could not be controlled. Got it? Another one is bills of exchange. BOE. Now, if we talk about the bills of exchange, okay. So basically, the bill of exchange is actually an instrument in writing containing an unconditional order. Now, you can say in the written form, which means it is clearly defined, and containing the unconditional order, which means the maker who made or drafted this, you can say bill of exchange, could not put the conditions on the bill after several period of time or after making this bill. Here you can see the picture of this bills of exchange also. Directing a certain person to pay certain sum of money only to or to the order of certain person or to the bearer of the instrument. Okay. Like you can say the bill of exchange is actually made by the maker. Okay. Like suppose Mr. X and Mr. Y, and again we have these two people. Mr. X purchased something from Mr. Y of worth rupees 1 lakh, but Mr. X said that I could not pay you rupees 1 lakh now. Kindly allow me 20 days and I will pay it after 20 days. So now assume the date is 1st January. After 20 days means on 21st January, Mr. X become liable to pay Mr. Y. Okay. Then what will happen? Mr. Y will make a bill of exchange. Okay. In which he will say that I have provided you this particular thing of worth rupees this. Now you can see it also. Amount is $50,000. Date was 1st January. Let's assume is 2024. Term 1 month after date paid to Mr. A or order sum for the value received. Now you can say after this date, here is Mr. A. Now let's assume Mr. X. After this date, the Mr. X is liable to pay $50,000 written down here. Let's assume it's 1 lakh rupees to pay rupees 1 lakh to Mr. Y. Okay. So Mr. Y will draft a bill. That will be a bills receivable. Mr. X received the bill, that will be a bill payable. The bill payable means that the person who is bearing this bills payable is liable to pay. Bills receivable means the person who is bearing this bills receivable is liable to achieve the money or entitled to achieve the money. Okay. And again, as I have told you, the bill could be easily transferred to some other person. Like, for example, there is a hypothetical situation. Mr. X purchased something of worth rupees 1 lakh from Mr. Y. Mr. Y already having the debt of rupees 1 lakh from Mr. Z. Then Mr. Y having a choice to transfer it directly to Mr. Z, which means on 21st January, Mr. X is not to pay the bill to Mr. Y. Directly, he will pay the amount to the Mr. Z so that Mr. X will make payment to Mr. Y and Mr. Y automatically make the payment to Mr. Z. Okay, that's how the things work. It is actually an order made by one person to another person to pay money to a third person. All right. It has three parties: the drawer, the drawee, the pay. Okay. Now, let's understand deep sums in a proper sense. First is the drawer. The drawer is the person or party who draws the bill, therefore gives the order to pay money to the third party. Okay. Drawee. Drawee is a person or party upon whom the bill is drawn. There means who is ordered to pay or who is liable to pay. Pay. Pay is the third person or party who is finally payable under the bill, therefore the party in whose favor the bill is drawn. Okay. Now, you can say, in our case, Mr. Y is a drawer, Mr. X is a drawee, and pay is Mr. Z because he is the one who is going to receive this amount. Okay. Then, that's how the three parties in bills of exchange could be covered. I hope now the bill of exchange is cleared in your mind. Now check. Might be we not aware about the promissory note and the bills of exchange, but we all must be aware about the check. Because if you ever opened your bank account in any bank, then you have been provided with two books from the banks: passbook and checkbook. Okay. So that's why you are aware about the check. What is check and how does it works? But now we will understand the check working under the negotiable instrument. How it works under as per the negotiable instrument. So basically a check is also the kind of bill of exchange. It also a kind of bill of exchange. But why we could not consider it as a bill of exchange? Because it is having two additional qualifications that makes it some kind different. And what are these two additional qualifications? These qualifications are: first, it is always drawn on a banker. Second, it is always payable on demand. Okay. Now, banker. In previous bills of exchange, we have seen that it is totally depend upon the condition on which the bill is to be made. If the bill is to be made on the payer, okay, then the bill could also be made on the bank. It means the bill is having the two choices, whether on banker, whether on the person. Second, the bill also having the two components, could be payable on demand and could be set up by the time or set up by the date. All right. But the check does not having this kind of conditions. It is always drawn on a banker, not could be drawn on a person. Second, it is always payable on demand, which means whenever the check will present it to the bank will give money to the presenter. It is the only instrument that could be payable to bearer on demand. Okay. Generally, the instruments are payable on time or set by time, but this check is the only instrument that could be payable to bearer on demand. Okay. Understand this. Now, when we move further, we have the another one, that is the demand drafts. Now you can see this is the picture of demand draft. Okay. Now, what is this? What is the concept of demand draft? DD. If you remember, when we were discussing the previous lectures, we have also encountered this term there. DD, demand drafts. What do you mean by this? Let's understand. It is a bill drawn either on demand or otherwise by one bank on another in favor of a third party, or by one branch of a bank on another branch of the same bank, or by the head office on a branch, or vice versa. Okay, like if you learn it again, it is the bill drawn either on demand, otherwise by one bank on another in favor of third party. Okay, or you can say even the same bank could draw on it from one branch of the bank to the another branch of the bank, or might be the head office on the bank on some branch of the bank and some branch on the head office of the bank. So that's how the system of demand drafts works. Now, endorsement of negotiable instruments. When the maker or the holder of a negotiable instrument signs the instrument, otherwise than such as the maker, but for the purpose of negotiation, either on the back or face thereof for the same purpose signs a stamp paper intended to be completed as a negotiable instrument, it is said to endorse the negotiable instrument. Okay, which means the maker or holder is called the endorser, who is liable to fulfill it. Okay, again, just repeat it. Maker or holder of a negotiable instrument signs the instrument for the purpose of negotiation, whether on the face or the back of the instrument, having the same purpose, with stamp paper, to complete it as a negotiable instrument, then it is known as the endorsing of the negotiable instrument. Endorsement could be of two types, whether endorsement in blank and endorsement in full. So remember the endorsement of two types, the endorsement in blank and the endorsement in full. Got it? Now the endorsement in blank. First to be understood. An endorsement is said to be in blank if, while endorsing the instrument, the endorser signs only his name on the negotiable instrument. Okay, like you can say the amount is not mentioned and other details are not mentioned, but the endorser signs only his name on the negotiable instrument. Okay, then it is known as the endorsement in blank. Got it? Now, after understanding this endorsement in blank, let's move to the endorsement in full. Endorsement in full. For an endorsement to be in full, while endorsing the instrument, the endorser also had to add a direction to pay the amount mentioned in the instrument to or to the order of the specified person. Like here you can say the amount and the conditions or directions are mentioned on the order or to the some specific person. The person so specified in the endorsement is called the endorsee of the instrument. Okay. Now, after finishing this, we have come to the shares and debentures. Now, nowadays, you must have heard about the share market, stock market, okay, mutual funds and all. So, what are the shares actually? How you will be able to define the shares in a proper sense? So, shares refers to the share capital of the company, describes the right of a holder to the specified amount of the share capital of the company. For example, if the company having 100 crores as the capital, the company divided this capital into some small portion of 100 sets. It means one set is equivalent to 1 crore. Okay. Then these sets as a share will be listed to the stock market. And if someone purchases this share, which means that someone is paying money to the company and he is become rightful holder of some specific rights in the company. For example, if the person purchased the 10 shares, which means he has given 10 crores to the company, and by share volume, he will be a shareholder of 10% equity in that particular company. Okay. So, which means he is having the 10% management rights in that company. That's how the share system works. Now, what is a debenture then? Debenture implies a long-term instrument showing the debt of the company towards the external party. Yields a definite rate of interest issued by the company, may or may not be secured against assets. Like debentures are not giving the right to the holder, but it is like giving the loan to the company. For example, the company reads 10 crore rupees, then the company listed the debentures in volume of 10 in the amount of one debenture equals to 1 crore. Okay, so the person who will purchase the debenture, he is actually giving that amount to the company as a loan, and the company is showing it as a debt towards the external party, because the person who had bought the debenture not getting any right in the company, so he is external party, not internal party, and he is also getting some definite rate of interest, which means like 10%, 15%, whatever the company will decide. Okay, and the debenture may or may not be secured against the assets, that is having the high rate of interest in comparison with the shares, but also having some high risk because they are may or may not be secured against the asset. So if they fall, that could not be recovered that easily. What actually shares are? So almost I have provided you a valuable insight in the shares, but let's understand it by this. The smallest division of company's capital is called known as shares. Like the company capital is 100 crores. 100 crores is a full division. Out of this, the 100 divisions have been made by 1 crore or 1 as it is, which means the smallest division of 1 crore is the share of the company. Represents a portion of ownership of the shareholder in the company. Like if someone holding the 10 shares, it means he is holding the 10%. Someone holding the 40 shares means 40%. So that is the ownership criteria. The teenage part of the company capital is known as the share, like we have just covered. The shares are broadly divided into the two major categories, equity shares and the preference shares. Got it? Now, what actually debentures are? Debentures are actually the long-term debt instrument issued by the company under its common seal to the holder, showing that the company is indebtedness to the person. The company is liable to pay this amount to the person because the person has provided it as a loan to the company. The capital raised by the company is the borrowed capital. That is why the debenture holder are the creditor of the company. Like we could say, if the one is purchasing the share in the company, he is getting the ownership rights. Okay, the interest rate will be low. Also, the person will become liable to bear the risk and profit of the company. But if someone is purchasing the debenture, he is not getting any ownership in the company. He is actually the creditor to the company, and he will receive the interest rate on the fixed basis. Doesn't matter whatever the company situation is, whether in the profit, whether on the loss. They are also freely transferable because these are not the ownership. The return on the debentures is in the form of interest at a fixed rate. Debentures are secured by the charge on assets, although unsecured debentures can also be issued. Like as we have seen, debentures may be secured against the asset or may not be. They do not carry any voting rights. Debentures are of following types: secured debentures, unsecured debentures, convertible debentures, non-convertible debentures. Now the difference between the shares and the debentures, if we look, first meaning, shares are the owned fund of the company. Okay, it means the company having already a fund and it is inviting the ownership from outside. Debentures are borrowed fund. The company do not have the fund, it is borrowed from the external parties. Share represent the capital of the company. Debentures represent the debt of the company. The holder of shares known as the shareholder. The holder of debentures is known as a debenture holder. Status holders of shares are owners. Status holders of debentures are creditors. Form of return: shareholders get the dividend on profit. Debenture holders get the interest on the fixed basis. Payment of return: dividend could be paid to the shareholder only out of the profit. Interest can be paid to the debenture holders if the company is not having the profit, because the company is entitled to pay it to the holder. Voting rights: because the shareholder is also having the management and ownership rights, so he is having the voting rights. The debenture holder is only the creditor to the company, so he is not holding any voting right. Conversion: shares could never be converted into the debentures, but the debentures having the option to convert it into the shares like the convertible debentures. Repayment in the event of winding up, it means when the company is closing its business. Shares are repaid after the payment of all the liabilities. Debentures always get priority over shares, so they are repaid before shares. Okay. Now the equity share and the preference shares. Equity shares first. These are the shares which carrying the voting rights and on which the rate of dividend is not fixed. Which means if the company having the high profit, dividend rate will be higher. Company having no profit, no dividend would be there. They are irredeemable in nature. In case of winding up of the company, equity shares are repaid after the payment of all the liabilities. Which means they get the last preference in the repayment when the company is closing the business. Preference shares. These are the shares which do not carry voting rights, but the rate of interest is fixed. These are redeemable in nature. In case of winding of the company, preference shares are repaid before the equity shares. Now, the difference between the equity and the preference shares, meaning these are the ordinary shares of the company representing the part ownership of the shareholder in the company. Preference shares, these are the shares that carry the preferential rights on the matters of payment of dividend and repayment of capital. Payment of dividend, the dividend is paid after the payment of all the liabilities. Priority in payment of dividend over equity shares. Repayment of capital, in the event of winding up of the company, equity shares are repaid at the end. In the event of winding up of the company, preference shares repaid before equity shares. Now, rate of dividend of equity shares fluctuating because there is no fixed dividend. On preference shares, they having the fixed. Redemption? No. Yes. Voting rights? Equity shares carrying the voting rights, but normally the preference shares do not carry the voting rights. However, in exceptional circumstances, they could also having the voting rights. Convertibility? Equity shares could never be converted into the preference shares, but the preference shares having the possibility to get converted into the equity shares. Deferred shares and bonus shares. First, deferred shares. These shares are those shares which are held by the founders or pioneer or beginners of the company. They are called as the founder shares or management shares. It is generally given to them who had started the business. In deferred shares, the right to share profits of the company is deferred. Therefore, postponed till all the other shareholders receive their normal dividends. Bonus shares, those shares which issued by a company free of charge at bonus to the shareholder. Issued to the existing shareholder in proportion to their existing shares holding. Kind of gift to the shareholders from the company. Now, what is a share capital? Let's have a look on this. Authorized share capital. Maximum amount of capital which could be issued by a company, it could be increased from time to time. Issued share capital, part of authorized capital which is offered to the investors. Subscribed share capital, part of issued capital which is accepted and agreed by the investor. Paid up capital, part of subscribed capital, the amount of which is paid by the investor. Normally, all companies accept complete money in one shot and therefore issued. Subscribed and paid capital becomes one and the same. Conceptually, paid up capital is the amount of money which is actually invested in the business. Here we have finished the topic. Now it's part for the summary revision. We have discussed the negotiable instrument, definition, types, key features. Then we have discussed the endorsement, like endorsement type, in blank, in full. We have discussed the shares, like definition, types. We have discussed the debentures, like definition, key features. We have discussed the types also. We have discussed the share capital terms like authorized share capital, issue share capital, subscribed share capital, paid up capital. And with this, we have finished the topic. Okay. So here we have finished the part 1. It is requested to all of you kindly revise the facts and figures that all we have discussed here before you go for the part 2. Because the part 2 will have the relevancy with the part 1. And if you haven't revised the part 1, you won't be able to get the figures in the proper sense in part 2. Okay. So with this note, let's end this lecture and thank you.